Thank you, Scott.
Yes, thank you.
We'll make sure it comes up first.
And thanks for being willing to. That means you're gonna have to put it together and then you're gonna have to bring the convocation ready.
I'm gonna do it quick, easy, and we'll find. I've got some things that I want to go by.
I'm good. Okay. And I brought it. Oh,
About 10 spots to fill. Yeah, how about if I send it, since we got free time? I'll send you.
is it good? Okay, I think we're fine. Good.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you so much.
And I'll be around for like the next 30 days, so if something goes with parking, just,
Text you on this phone and everything?
or email me, like, message me.
Oh, okay,
through
okay.
chat,
Okay.
and I'll have it on.
Okay.
YouTube.
It already started.
I call this meeting of the Lebanon Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code 551. No speakers, right? Okay. Okay, we have no speakers, so I guess that makes Donna.
Get it. We have prepared the order for our science curriculum, which is newly adopted, and the total is $360,000 for 8 years. But we receive a substantial price cut when we buy for multiple years. And we will purchase that, but it's over $50,000. Therefore, we're asking for approval from the board to make that purchase.
So this gets us. So this gets us for 8 years without having to purchase anything else?
Correct, including the lab equipment, like not microphone, not microscopes, but like consumable things that you would need for a science experiment. So those will come to us every year annually, and we will have already paid for it. But it was a substantial, I can't tell you how much it is, but it was a substantial enough price cut that I asked Teresa, can we go ahead and get it for 8 years? Our plan is to use our instructional materials allotment, but we will, that's a puzzle, and so we have about $600,000 in instructional materials, and it expires this year, so we will use it all.
So this should cover, the IMAX should cover all of this
All of this, yes.
and what we've been approving for math and reading as well?
Yes, and those are all just budget transfers, so we will use all of that money.
Okay. And then do they put more money in that fund annually, or is that a one-time
Bi-
funding?
Biannually, it's my understanding.
Okay.
So we get an allotment, but it's for 2 years, but because we've had extra money, we haven't been using it. So we have saved it for 2 years, so we have 2 years worth to use now.
But it does have an expiration, so we can't just carry it indefinitely.
Correct.
And then it looks like we only have kits for 6 through 8. Why don't we have the, whatever first set, where it says Texas Science K through 5? We didn't need that part for 6 through 8.
I'm not-
First piece.
I think it's when you, because I think I had the same question, but this is on the third piece, where it pieces it together.
It says Texas Science K through 5 is one bid, and then investigation kits and equipment K through 5 with investigation kits and equipment 6 through 8.
And then is there one more that's for 6 through 8?
Not that I'm understanding, but that sounds right.
okay, and I may have to go back and look at it, but the total for what we are purchasing, and actually we're not purchasing for the high school, because when the high school came, they said, really, we have a good system in place, and we don't wanna buy this unless you're making us buy this, and obviously they are being very successful, so we're not making them buy something to put on the shelf. If at a point it becomes necessary, we will do that. I'm asking for your approval, and if we're missing part of that 8th grade, I think I went back and looked at it, I think it is complete, so I wonder if there's a, I don't know, and I didn't bring a copy, I'm sorry. But I'll make sure it's correct before I place the order.
Okay, any other questions? We have a motion to approve the curriculum as presented. Teresa makes a motion, Mike seconds it, all in favor? I'm sorry, Joyce, is that a aye or an abstain? Okay. Any opposed? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Donna. Rodney.
Okay, we have 2 assistant principal recommendations that we're bringing to y'all. And as with policy, all administration hires have to be approved by the board and not superintendent hires. For middle school, we have Amanda Leach, and she's coming to us from Lubbock Cooper from the classroom, and as a math interventionist. So she's been out of the classroom, has assumed a different leadership position on that campus. But she's been recommended by Laurie Jones. And at South, we are recommending Christy Peck. And Christy Peck is one of our own. She's our instructional coordinator for language arts and social studies. So those are 2 recommendations we're bringing to y'all for consideration tonight.
Does anyone have any questions? We have a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Matt makes a motion.
Second it.
Brooke seconds, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you, Rodney.
Okay, next we have the county appraisal district nominee for the open position. That was previously held by Dia Edens. So we are one of the entities that's able to have 2 representatives on the county appraisal district, which is Matt Buckpepper's already on there. So we would really need to open this up for y'all's nominations so that I can submit that to the CAD. So is that a nominee?
I nominate. I second the nominee.
Any further nominations?
I'm happy for you. I know I can do it, but I'm good with you.
Second Tuesday of the month, 8 o'clock in the morning.
Oh. I don't want to hear it. No, not good.
That wouldn't work for you.
No.
Are you a tennis player on those days?
Yes.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? You are out. Okay, and then this just goes on as our nomination. It's not
I'll find out
a
more.
vote yet.
I think the board of directors gets to vote on it.
Right, because it's inside the, different, I think. As you know, we had our property value study that we received back in January, and at that time, based off the values that CAD had, our study was not in line with the state comptroller's values. So we appealed that process, and Casey Bean from Purdue Brandon is here to talk to y'all tonight about the results of the appeal and any other information you want to share with us.
First, I'm not used to standing in front of the podium. What I do, other than property value study appeal, I travel around the state and I give presentations and speeches, and I always wander around the room. So I'm gonna try to stand here and be good. My name is Casey Bean, I work for Purdue Brandon, which is your attorney. I came to Purdue Brandon 3 years ago from the state comptroller's office. I was the supervisor for the property value study for about 15 years, so I know a lot about what I know about, which is property value study. I've given you a packet of information. I'm not gonna read that to you. I'm not really gonna go over a lot of that information because you can read that on your own. I will tell you, the property value study got released January 31st, which it is required by law to be released on or before February 1st each year. And they released it January 31st, which is typically what they do. The property value study determines how much state funding every school district in Texas is either going to get or going to pay into the system. Of course, Levelland ISD gets money. There are a lot of districts that pay into the system. The property value study is, the comptroller comes in at least every other year and goes through every appraisal district, every school district, and they value property. And then they compare it to what the appraisal district has. And this is a statistical study. They use different properties in different areas. They do apartments, they do commercial real property, commercial personal property, residences, rural property, raw land. They do a whole host of different types of property. I want to give you more information really on property value study than on your particular one, because you got your particular one in front of you. They compare their values, what the Property Tax Assistance Division puts on a property to what the appraisal district, and it should be, the idea is it needs to be within 95%, and that's because this is a statistical study that has a 5% margin of error. So if your values are within 5%, then PTAD will certify the local appraisal district's value to TEA, and then TEA will do funding from that. Now, in the state of Texas, this began in 1979 with the Peabody bill. That actually went into effect in 81. And it was never set up for the state to pay 50%. A lot of people think it should be local 50%, the state 50%. It was never set up that way. In the beginning, it was close to being that way. Right now, it's about 37% statewide that the state pays in. That has changed over the last legislative session, where they basically bought down some of the values by giving the $100,000 exemption on homestead. So that number has changed. It's going to be probably over 40%. I haven't seen the actual number for the 2024 school year. It's all based on the premise of about $6,200 per student is what the state says you need in order to educate your kids. We all know it costs more than that, but that's what the state says. So they do the property value study. It's a statistical study. You've got it in your packet, and let's see here. This is the summary, right, that's on the board right now. And you can see in category A, which is single family residences, the Property Tax Assistance Division found that your appraisal district was only at about 84% of market value. Now, this is based, in this particular instance, on all sales. The comptroller had, I don't remember how many sales, but they require about 15 per strata. They have 4 strata, so they had at least 60, probably closer to 100 transactions in Levelland. Property Tax Assistance Division would have gotten their sales from MLS out of Lubbock, I'm sure. That's not true in every district, but I'm familiar with this area. The appraisal district probably does not have access to that MLS information, which puts them behind the 8 ball. So you see it at 84%. D1, this chart up here has only the properties that were studied. So the D1, which is ag values, 1.8, mineral values at 98%, and if you go F1, which is commercial, is 96%. So those other numbers are all at least 95% or higher. So the reason why you're getting dinged on your school funding was residences in town at 84%. Now, I have looked at the preliminary values for your appraisal district, for level N, ISD. In category A, single-family residences, the appraisal district has gone up about 10% overall. Now, each individual property may have gone up 40% or down 3%, but overall, they went up about 10%. You can see on the chart, they were about 15.5% low. They've gone up about 10%. Now, I've also looked at the market, because this is all I do in life. I've looked at the market, and last year, the market was actually falling in Levelland and in the Lubbock area. In fact, statewide, the market it fell a little bit last year. I found it to be falling about 1/3% a month. Now, so that's gonna get us close. But you throw in that declining in property values as we came out of COVID. COVID made property values skyrocket. Values have now declined back down. Appraisal district went up 10%. I wish I had great news for you, and so you're going to pass property value study for 24, you're gonna get optimal school funding. I don't know that that's gonna be true. I'm not sure we went up high enough. I would like to have seen us go up 15, 18%. 10% raise, 4% decline, we're gonna be right there. It's probably gonna be close. I know the Level N ISD has not passed property value study in a while. And that's probably largely due to lack of, the appraisal district doesn't have access to the same sales that the comptroller has. In your packet is a little bit about how we appeal the property value study. It talks about market value. The value study comes out the 31st. We have 40 days to submit our appeal. We submitted that March 12th, I think, this year, March 11th this year. The comptroller looked through our information. They agreed with some, they disagreed with some, they sent it back to me. I reworked some evidence, sent it back in, they agreed with a little bit more. And we were able to help the ISD, not by as much as I would have loved to have, but when it's all cell sample that's 100% verified, there's not a lot that we can do. We did improve your stance a little bit. If you're curious as to exactly what is hurting you, in that packet and on this slide towards the end, it has every property that was studied individually. You can see which properties were low. Essentially, it was the low value houses in town. The two lowest, the comptroller breaks it up into 4 stratas. The strata 2, they go 2, 3, 4, and 5. Strata 2 is the lowest value properties, and then strata 3. Those are the 2 properties, the 2 categories of properties that are very low. Strata 2 was in the 70s, strata 3 was high 70s, I think. And then strata 4 and 5, I believe were okay. I know you're looking at it. I think strata 4 and 5 were not too bad off, but it's those bottom stratas. And I will tell you, I do this all over the state. It is always those bottom stratas that hurts every appraisal district. It's very difficult for them to get those low value properties correct. So I'm not singling out Hockley County. That is statewide. It's always rural properties, which PTAB did not test in Hockley, in Levelland, and then those low stratas. So that's what hurt us. I haven't seen whether your appraisal district went up on those low value properties. I hope that they did. As I said, that's where we're getting at. Any questions? I mean, I teach actually an all-day course on this, so I can go forever. But I'm gonna try to not overwhelm you with information that you don't need. But I'd be happy to answer any questions. I worked for the comptroller's office for 33 years, so I'm pretty familiar with that area. I've worked in appeals now for several years, so.
I do have one question. Did you maybe use this, or can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Good. You said that the appraisal district doesn't have access to the same information as the comptroller. Why not? That, personally, that doesn't seem fair to the appraisal district or the
This
school
is a good
system.
page. Whoever's got the computers is a good page. But
Well, it doesn't seem fair to the school district or the appraiser here, because, you know, a lot of blame can be placed on them because they don't have the
Sure,
information. You
sure.
can't deal with it if you don't have it.
And I spent 33 years at the comptroller's office defending that. Now I'm on the other side saying, give me the information. The short answer is the comptroller themselves cannot share that information. They're precluded because of copyright information. MLS is a commercial business. The board of realtors in Lubbock run the MLS, I assume for Levelland. They're in business to make money, and they make money by selling that information. And the comptroller purchases that information. So the comptroller can't give it out. The MLS, the board of realtors would have to give that out. So the comptroller can't give it out. Now, why does the board of realtors choose not to share that? And I've been around long enough to know there's gotta be at least one realtor in the room. So I don't wanna make anyone mad. Realtors, this is how they make their money too. They like having control of the information because this, how they sell houses, how they research houses, how they know what to ask for when they're selling your house, how they know what to offer when they're buying a house for you. So realtors have a vested interest in you not having that information. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, they just have an interest in them knowing the information. So, a lot of the board of realtors will not let the local appraisal district have the information because they're afraid they're gonna share it. Because they're a government entity, which means every piece of paper they have is subject to open records. The same with comptroller, everything is subject to open records with comptroller. Now, they get around this comptroller, when they're doing the property value study, it's a work in progress. So they don't have to share anything while the study's going. Then come January 31st, they can give that information out if it's to someone like me who's actively appealing the level of study. Then I can get their information, and I do get their information. But would they give it to you? No. And they wouldn't give it to the appraisal district unless they're doing the appeal. You're 100% right. It's not fair. And I could tell you more stories about just how unfair it is. The comptroller uses sales all the way through, for 2023, they use sales all the way through June of 23. Actually, it's July. And the appraisal district has to send out their tax notices in April. So even if they did have the information, they couldn't. The appraisal district has already set their values in April, and the comptroller is still using sales. Occurs April, May, June, July. So that's even more reason to think it's not fair. We can't fix it. It's the way it is. The legislature set all this up. The Attorney General's office has ruled, given Attorney General opinions, which generally carry the weight of law, that the comptroller does not have to share that, I can't share that information, so.
If you said the MLS in Lubbock, if they can sell their information, why can't we buy their information?
Well, and you can if they agree to let you. And I said that I believe Hockley County probably doesn't have access to MLS, which would be why it can't pass. I don't know that. And I've dealt with your appraisal district quite a bit, and I like all those folks there. They may have the information. I'm guessing they don't. Because generally when you have that information and the comptroller uses all sales, generally, eventually you pass the property value study. Maybe not that first year, second year, because it's kind of political suicide to raise values of, 40% overnight. But generally over time, they wind up passing, so, that would be the question, if you're interested, to ask your president, are you getting MLS? And if they are, then we need another discussion, how come we're not passing if we're using MLS? If they're not getting MLS, the next source is called TransUnion. TransUnion will sell the information to anybody. They'll sell it to you. They'll sell it to your boss. And it costs about $5,000, which compared to how much money Level Land ISD lost, that's a drop in the bucket. The TransUnion will sell that information. So if the MLS, the Board of Realtors won't share it, that's your next stop is TransUnion. And I warn all the appraisal districts, TransUnion is quickly going away because the Board of Realtors have gotten injunctions on it all over the place. They are still active, and if they don't have an active cease and desist order, because they get their information from MLS. They say they don't, but they do. If they don't have an active cease and desist, then your appraisal district can buy from TransUnion. Then you have to do that.
It just, it doesn't seem fair, but it isn't fair.
That's basically what it comes down to. It was a good question. Anything else? You can see on this has the actual ratios by strata, and it's those bottom two stratas in A that were killing us. The 93 and the 86, I'm looking at that ratio line. The total value is important. So when you see some of these other categories of property, look at the local value, like we got F1 only has $26 million. It all gets put together. So we really want the high value properties to have the highest ratios. They use what they call weighted mean. So you see in category A, which is residences, we have over $130 million in each strata. So that's where we got to pass. If we're going to pass property value study, we've got to pass those 4 stratas in A.
Can you talk a minute about the success you had and then what that means for Berlin ISD dollar-wise?
I can't tell you dollar-wise. We contract with a man called Omar Garcia, who used to work at TEA. Some of you may be familiar with that name. He's been around as long as I have. And Omar has, if any of you, and you may have seen the actual formula for school funding. I've seen the formula, it's confusing as heck. You probably understand it because you look a lot smarter than I am. I don't really understand it. I know there's a lot of things that goes into it. But Omar will plug in these numbers. And he will tell us how much money you're going to get from TEA. And then he will look at it after we do the appeal, and he'll tell us how much we improved it. I'm going to tell you, we didn't improve it a lot. I think on the confidence interval, this is the confidence interval. If you scroll a little bit lower on this, who's running this with the student? Can you scroll down that local test on it? No, go back up now. The local test, that's the confidence interval. I will warn you, I'm a statistician by education from the good folks just to the east here at Texas Tech. So I sometimes talk over people's heads, and I'm not going to do that. That's the 5% margin there, the lower limit and the upper limit. The local test value of 1.5 billion. Then you do 5% more than that would be 1.69, 5% under that would be 1.53. So your value had to be in between there. Needed to be at least 1.537, and it wasn't. Now, that was a difference, trying to think what before and the after. I know we improved it about 2 million, which isn't.
So what's in our packet is the
Is
original.
no, that's the appeal.
This is the appeal. What's in our board book is the.
You should have on the right side, I think that there was
It's the same thing.
a before and after. somewhere there was a before and after. Did you rearrange this one?
No.
I could have sworn there was before and after. Well, regardless, the before, you were out by, I wanna say it was 34 million, and now you're out 32 million. It was, we improved it, but not enough to make a huge difference in that, in your funding. Right, now you're out, yes, now you're out about 31 million, I think you were out 33, 34 million to start with, now you're out 31 million. How that translates into dollars that are gonna be on the check TA sends, I'm not sure. And then behind that, you see all the individual properties that were in the study. So you can see if maybe your neighbor's house was in the study. These are gonna be all sales. The account numbers, the property ID, go to your local website, type in that property ID, you'll see the house for these category A properties. And you can see on the right side, if you look at that category A stratum 2 page, those ratios, we gotta get those to be 95, and there's not a lot of 95 ratios in there. There are 70s, 50s, 80s, 60s. That's our issue.
Any other questions from?
Now, I came prepared to talk for 2 hours.
I really appreciate the explanation and the slowing down and talking through the process, and want to just reiterate, this is not the school has failed in any way. This is the state and the local appraisal district arguing about values, and it has nothing to do with the school district.
And that I hear that all the time, that we're being penalized because a second and third party don't agree. And so you're not fair. You're being penalized because the appraisal district and the property tax assistance division don't agree with that. What we have in the state of Texas is called indirect equalization, where the comptroller, they don't penalize the appraisal district, they indirectly penalize them by withholding money from the school district, who then puts force on the appraisal district, called indirect equalization. In other states, they have direct equalization, where the state comes in and looks at your house and says, you're low on her house, raise it 10%, and then they have to raise it. That's not gonna work in Texas. You guys do not want somebody from Austin coming in and telling you, hey, the Dickey's barbecue, which is where I ate, y'all are 20% low, raise it 20%. You do not want that to happen. And that's other states. I just came back from Minnesota, that's what they do in Minnesota. They don't do that in Texas because us West Texans don't like those guys in Austin. So. Anything else?
Thank you very much.
I appreciate your time. Any questions? I left a bunch of business cards here. This is really all that I do. So give me a holler, drop me an email. I'll see if I can answer. And as soon as we know a number, as soon as Lamar gets us a number, they'll be sharing it with you. You may already know the number. You do. She should be doing this talk.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Which door should I go out?
You know what this?
Thank you. Y'all have a good night.
Thank you.
Be safe. Okay, Teresa, are you ready to finish your presentation tonight?
Yeah. Let's get started.
I think we have it.
Okay, so we're gonna start with budget workshop. So we're gonna go over just a few topics.
school funding, tax rate, property value, tax rate collections, history, fund balance, attendance, assumptions based off of history, 2023 attendance, all of that, those assumptions, the compliance that we need to do moving forward, some changes, revenue projection, expense projections, fund balance impact, and then what's next. But right off the top of, before we start, this is very preliminary. We still don't have certified values. This is estimated by, estimated values in April. Like Casey did mention, we did get those analyzed by Purdue Brandon, and we did not meet the property value study, and that's about another $700,000 in funding. We're hoping that July, she mentioned July 15th, she was gonna release the certified values. I'm hoping those are raised significantly, but we'll see then. We're still projecting about 700,000. Maybe we should increase that to be more conservative of that number. Also, tax compression rate is based off of tax compression rate is based off of certified values. But the tax rate I'm proposing right now is based off of our estimated values. So that might change up or down, okay? So let's move forward. So the state determines what we need and how it fills its buckets. So it goes state, it tells us, okay, you don't have enough tax money coming in, so we'll give you more state dollars. Or you have enough tax money that you don't need state money, so all you do is use tax money in your district. We have a combination of both. And we'll go through that further down. We're looking at state is about 60, and local is about 36, almost 40% of local. So the next item is what is composed of property taxes is the M&O and INS rate. Our M&O tax rate is compressed. So the only way that we can increase a tax rate is if we go through a voter tax rate election. And you have to have an efficiency audit. There's many ways that you have to go through, many things that you have to go through in order for us to go and raise the tax rate above the approved compressed rate. And then the state value, the state aid is based off of our values, influence that, and then our enrollment, attendance, and then our special population. And then our basic allotment of 6160. So those are the basic items that affect the state values, or the state aid and local aid, which is the property tax. So if one increases, the other decreases.
I want to back up for just 1 second and draw attention to that basic allotment number. When we talk about the state has not increased their funding, that is the number that is still the same since 2019.
Correct. That is the number, and it has not been increased since House Bill 3, which happened to take effect in 1920. So, school year 2019-2020. So that has not been increased. it's a balancing act. So if one share increases, the other decreases. And it's only based off of what our numbers, what the district needs. So they're not gonna give us any more, money if our, for example, if our attendance grew and our property value grew, so that means we taxed more, they're not gonna send us more aid. So it washes itself out. Okay, so the next is, the district funding is 6160, and then 1% of average daily attendance for Level M, is $182,000. So just by having increasing 1% in attendance, it's $182,000 there. Do y'all have any questions so far? Let's go and look at the history of tax rates. So the history of tax rates, in 2019-2020 school year was the first year that we went into compression. We went into compression because of HB3s. We had just passed a 2-cent tax increase, voter tax increase. It was a 2 cent. We were originally 104. We reduced INS 2 cents and put it on the M&O side. So you'll see it in 2019, in 2018, 2019. So that was the year that it went to effect. And then in 2019, 2020, HB3 came in and our tax rate went down. We were compressed. We weren't allowed to tax at that old rate. So ever since then, we have been at a tax compression. So you've seen, and the only tax compression is on the maintenance and operations side. INS, we could tax as needed to make our bond payment. So whenever that bond passed, it allowed us to increase that area as needed to make the bond payment. So if property values decrease tremendously, that we need to increase the tax rate in order to make that bond payment. Whenever that was passed, we are allowed to do that. But on the M&O side, maintenance operation, we are not allowed to go beyond the compressed rate. And each year it has decreased. Since 2019-20, it's decreased 41 cents. So it's decreased 41 cents, and it's decreased about 15 cents the past year. The past 2 years it's decreased 15 cents. Okay, if we look at property values. Property values went down in 2020, 2021. They decreased and they're slowly coming back up. So that's helped us as a district to be able to have those values increase so we can be able to collect that revenue and local taxes.
But once again, that comes in on the tax compression, so we're not able to take advantage completely of the tax value in the property value increase.
Correct. So let's say, and we're also, okay, so it's a tax compression. So let's say that our values did increase 10%. We're capped at 2.5%. So we're not allowed to see all of that increase in 1 year. Because we're compressed at a 2.5% increase of local values. So it's not just It's not just the tax rate that's compressed, it's the increase in total property value, that is compressed also. Okay, we are very blessed. If you're looking at the tax history collections, we are very blessed to be able to collect at the rate we do. We collect about 98% to almost 100% of what we budget for in tax collections. It's gonna be different this year. We do collect what we budget, but now the state is saying that we should be collecting a whole lot more than what our local CAD values show. So that's when we're gonna see the decrease in funding, because the state is saying, oh, you should be collecting here, but our local CAD is only collecting up to here. So there's this gap, and that's the funding that we're losing. Or that's the funding that we're missing, because the state comptroller says you should be collecting a whole lot more, so TEA is not gonna be sending us more because they're expecting us to be collecting that gap. And that's where we lose as a district. But if we're looking at collections, we're collecting on target with what the local CAD is proposing on both the maintenance and operation and the INS side. And you'll look and you'll see that on the INS side, we have decreased it when property values started increasing in 2020. We have decreased it from 31 cents all the way to 26 cents. So we have decreased as values go up on that side. Okay, so we have been fortunate on the general operating fund balance. We have been fortunate that in 2019, 2020, we had some COVID funding, ESSER. That's when ESSER came into the picture, and we were able to capture some of that funding and to offset some of the general operating expenditures. So that allowed us to put money into fund balance to help assist when ESSER funding is over. ESSER funding is over at the end of this year, which is 23-24, and that is about 2.5 million. That's what we used for 23-24. But starting in 1920, we were saving or putting back into fund balance about 1.9, 1.6 million into fund balance. If you'll look there, you can see it increase in 19, 20, 21, and 22. You've seen those increases. And then in 23, you see that dip, but that was not because we were using the fund balance. We were using the fund balance, but it was not for anything other than what we were already planning on doing. We had already set aside capital expenditures for various projects, for facility maintenance, for other different areas, and that's the use of it. And then, so now we're moving forward, and that's how we generated that increase the last few years in fund balance with the use of ESSER funding. The next slide is INS. That has been increasing also. And this INS fund balance is only allowed to be used in to pay our bonds early, but only for bonds. And that has been increased. And we are currently still projecting at 26 cents there, but we possibly might be able to decrease it or help us offset one another. So offset INS if we able to increase M&O, if we go for tax election, but we're still not there. We're still, depending on what our values say. Our certified values will determine INS. Next slide is the average attendance. Okay, so for school funding, there's two different things you see. For school funding, it's average daily attendance. That is our main focus. It's not enrollment. We can have 4,000 students, but if not everybody shows up every day, we don't get funding. So we only get funding on the time that students are in the classroom. So for 2024, our average daily attendance was 93.88%. We budgeted for 94%, which is very close. But if we would have, the higher it goes, the 1% that I was talking about earlier is 182,000, that would increase funding. So our enrollment is 2617. That's on an October snapshot. That's an October snapshot, the last day in October. That's whenever they do a snapshot of how many students are enrolled. And that's what they're gonna, that's the picture they take, and then that's how we value, or that's the same picture that we are gonna compare year after year. So I know that previously, maybe last board meeting, we said that we ended the school year very close. Maybe we lost 20 students. Because that's a comparison from last year's May to this year May. But if I'm comparing from October to October, that's when we see that decline of almost 70 students. And then the ADA is from last summer to like summer peas to summer peas. That's the difference. So there's two different numbers and two different capture dates. Enrollment captured is in October, and attendance is captured in the summer. So after the whole school year is over, that's when ADA is captured. Okay, so assumptions. So we're assuming a lot of things during budget time. So for M&O, we're assuming that based off of certified values, we're looking at our tax compression rate to be 6.6792, and then our INS to be 0.26, to be a decrease of 3 cents and a half. So that's a decrease. And then we're anticipating losing 70 students, and that's reflected in our ADA of 2276 compared to the ADA at summer Keynes for 2341. And then just the same thing with WADA, weighted average daily attendance. Weighted average daily attendance is what we use for the next slide. So the next slide is our special programs. So we have different areas, special ed, dyslexia, state comp ed, bilingual. All of those have weighted average daily attendance that are based off our students, and depending on their attendance also. So those are calculated based off of their weighted rate, and then you multiply by our WADA, and then you get a number. And then that number, for example, for special education, 55% of that is $2.4 million. That is required to be spent only on special ed. 176 is dyslexia, state comp ed is 1.5, so forth and so on. So each item in this list is based off of our WADA, based off our student population, based off of their weighted rate, and how much we're required to spend. So that, this expenditures is reflected in our budget later on.
Teresa, on the special ed, is there any break in it for losing a population of students, or this included all the students we have and then it still applies to the exact same?
No, so if, on the next, item is our compliance. So we have two compliances, IDEA B and ESSA maintenance of effort. So IDEA B is your special ed federal funding and state and local funding. So if we have a huge decrease, we can ask for exemptions to be exempt for, because one, I need to explain this before. So in special ed, we are required to maintain the same effort from year to year. So you'll see on this test, there's 4 tests here: local, state and local, per capita, and state and local. So there's 4 tests. You're required to pass 1 test. We pass 2 tests. We pass the state and local, and then the per capita state and local. Okay? If there's a huge change in population or special ed expenditure, we file for exemptions. So for example, let's say that we had a very, like a veteran teacher, so she's paid at the higher scale. And we replace that teacher with a brand new teacher, which is on the lower. We're still required to spend 1 year, the same expense from 1 year to the next. But that's a legitimate expenditure change that we would ask for an exemption because we lost a teacher with 20+ years of experience. So there's a gap. So we would submit those exemptions and to lower down our required spending. So we're going to lower down that required spending based off of legitimate expenditures. And then if our student base decreases, that we're allowed an exemption. We just have to explain why our student population decreased or our expenditures towards specific students decreased. Let's say a student that needed a 1-to-1 aid, graduated or is no longer with us. So that expenditure is going to go down for that student because we paid for an aid that's no longer needed, or like the care that was provided for that student is no longer needed, so those services are decreased. So we can ask for an exemption. Am I correct on that?
There's more, like, let's say there's a real expensive program we're having to provide for a very severely disabled student, like maybe autism treatments, behavior treatments, something like that adds up, and if that student graduates or leaves us for whatever reason, we can include those expenditures as an exemption as well.
So does that answer your question? And then the ESSA maintenance of effort, those have tests also, and that is the expenditure based off federal funding. So last year's expenditures compared to this year's expenditures, what is the difference? There is a variance you can go down by based off of enrollment or attendance, and then you can ask for an exemption if you're not compliant. Not as much as IDFB, but there's more, I think my percentage is higher of the exemption on ESSA. And IDFB, you either meet or you don't. There's a 25% variance on ESSA. Okay. So moving forward, we are looking at changes for special ed for next year. So we're not gonna be in a co-op anymore, we're gonna be a standalone. So same services, everything's still gonna be provided, it's just a standalone, no co-op. We're not combining districts and sharing services. All the services that were provided before are still gonna be provided now. That's federal law, we have to serve our special ed population. The only difference is we only concentrate on our students. Okay, so the differences here you'll see is, I wanted to compare for 23-24 to 24-25. Now in function 93, which is payments to the physical agent, for current year, we paid $721,000 into the co-op, into Spectrum. That's how much we paid into it. Next year, we're not paying into a co-op, but we have to move those expenditures up. So you'll see the 685 in instruction, and that's to pay salaries. And then you'll see the leadership, that's for the director, and other items, like diags and counselors and all of that. And then your transportation, which is sped transportation. Some of those items, if you look at 23-24, those items were still offered this year. The only increase is the function 11, which is all of the payroll for all the change from SPECO into local, and then the reduction of the payment. So we come at a positive of $123,938. So it's being a standalone is $123,000 cheaper. And then it's broken down to what we're looking at. That's payroll, that's contracted services, which is our, like, your PT, OT, all of those things that we can, that we don't have on payroll, and then some supplies, and then other operating items. So that's the difference for special ed. Intermediate savings, these are projected, utilities and staffing. The utilities is on a very conservative, both of them are very conservative. We did project, and I can reassure you all that it's more than 502, but that's was used to be able to provide that 3% increase for the current year. We're gonna actually finalize the utility savings to present to the community advisory committee tomorrow. So we're working on getting that updated and more accurate there. Okay, so budget changes. So when we start looking at the budget, this only includes the step increases for teacher scale. Our teacher scale currently is above the state minimum schedule. So we're not required to do the step increase, but we feel that teachers need that step increase. And district contribution for TRS is increasing. All the expenditures from ESSER are being transferred, minus the absorptions. And the special ed department reconfiguration, the decrease. and then the attendance at 94. Okay, you'll see how I came up with the teacher retirement district contribution. It's not something that we decided to do, the increase. They tell us that it's our increase. Okay, so stepping into revenue, our local revenue is about 10.5, almost $10.6 million out of the $29 million revenues that we collect. So local is made up of our tax collections, our interest earnings, and then local just miscellaneous revenues. So for example, royalty checks, any fees that, restitution fees, any of those items go into our local area. And then state, well, state is our state revenue for attendance, and then all of the allotments that I showed previously. Federal, this federal is for our Medicaid reimbursement, as well as some of the transfer in for indirect costs from other federal funds. And then the other is also from like the food service, and then some of the local state funding. And to a total of 29 million. So expenditures are to 31.7 million. 78% is payroll. So those are expenditures. And then it's broken down differently. So some of these items are broken down the way we need to have them for first rating and how they impact first rating, instructional support and instruction. So the different categories. So, and that is that's how it's made up. So instruction is 59.46%, and then instructional support is 11%. So it's broken down depending on the category of expenditure. It's just a different breakdown. And then the next page is a breakdown in comparison of 1 year to the next. So you'll see function 11, which is instruction. It increased by $2.8 million, which is your transfer in from ESSER, as well as your teacher steps increase, and as well as that special instructional pay going in there. So that's why you see a 2.8 there. The biggest changes there was that function 23, and an admin position absorbed there. Function 33, health services, is an absorption there. Student transportation, it's not an increase there entirely just because we're short on staff. It's we need to be fully staffed, and in order for us to be fully staffed, it's an increase there. Then fuel will increase. Fuel increases, staff increases, and then repair and supply increase there. A decrease in general admin, that was a decrease. There, I lost someone in my business office from 1 year to the next. Function 51, that's an increase in insurance from last still haven't received the premiums for this year, so that's still an increase. We adopted it after there was an increase, if I'm not mistaken. Function 52 is our SRO contract. So for 2.5 SROs, that's the compensation there. Data processing, which is very minimal. Debt service is decreasing, so we have lease payments for some of our white fleet. So it was Suburbans, if I'm not mistaken, a Malibu car. So those lease payments have been done, so we're saving 101,000 in lease payments there. Function 93 was the payment to Specco, and then function 99 decreased, and that's our fee to the CAP, the collections, the tax collections. So, so that's our decreases in each one.
Are we gaining an officer? Are we gaining an officer or?
No, we never went back and amended it after we approved the, was it 5 SROs? Yeah, we never went back, we just kept it, and you'll see that budget amendment next month. So you'll see that we have been expending it out, it's just we never did it through the budget there. Y'all have any questions?
Can we talk about the hail damage and roof repair and where all that comes in relation to this budget?
So we still have lots of roof repairs. The deductibles there, the deductibles for the storm that's coming that we don't know how much our deductible is gonna be. That is gonna be on top of 3.8 million you see there. I wish I had another magic pot to say, but we're looking at a $3.8 million just on operating for next school year. That's not counting the storm deductible and the May 2022 claim.
You don't have the May 22 claim in here? You don't have it in there? So that's another $1 million.
500.
The new storm, we're estimating at about 1.4 million on the deductible. Now, Adam did hear back from our adjuster today, and he said we're a couple of weeks out from getting that final report where they tell us with deductible estimates what we're looking at.
So hopefully by the end of this month, hopefully by the time we get certified values and all of that, we can get more accurate deductible cost and all of that. But we are still looking at different avenues, like we are still looking at, disaster pennies, we're looking at, FEMA, seeing if we can get reimbursed some. They had mentioned that we couldn't apply our deductible towards it, but if some items that our insurance said was covered, but that it was below our deductible, those are areas that we can ask for FEMA funding at 75%. So we would be responsible for 25%. Yes. So we're still looking at different avenues on how to fund the storms. But we're still having to pay for the May claim, health claim of 500,000.
In the high school roof for 212.
212. So that's 700,000 on top of 3.8.
And at what point, I don't have Dr. Burwell here or Coach Leong, but at what point is the field house HVAC, I know it sounds on the face like that's a want and not a need, but if we have to lock those doors, at what point does that become in the need instead of the want? So it's still on the back burner until we
It
figure
already,
that out.
already is a need.
It is a need.
But there's nothing here for, well, I mean, you still got the 690 in capital outlay that you're trying to work through what we need that for.
Yes.
So that could change between now and August.
And to that tone, the only differences here from one year to the next is majority payroll. Everything, which is 6,200, 63, 64, and capital outlay, which is everything moved, shifted from one year to the next. And so the 690 that we have in capital outlay, you see it, on the right-hand side, the 690,000, 590 is for, is, right now, 250 is for maintenance side, and, three something is for, the transportation, which we used, for activity bus. One out of local and the rest out of fund balance. And then the 250 in maintenance is, still, we can move it around for those type of things. If we don't, if we push some of the other projects or like the replacement schedule, right now, we're looking at everything looks good. We have other needs other than replacing, maintenance vehicles. We have more of a need of HVACs or anything like that. So that 590 is available to be moved as needed.
And then just to be clear, if we were to open intermediate for the, because we've stated numerous times, we are not opening intermediate for the next school year that we're talking about here. But if we were to open intermediate for the 25-26 school year, any repairs or make ready has to come out of this number as well. So it would be further budget deficit for any of those dollars.
Or if we decide to assign some of that 590 in capital outlay to be used towards that, that's impossible also. Just remember, there's no raise in here for staff other than the teacher staff. And it varies from $300 to maybe $800 from one year to the next. So
And only applies to
it
teachers.
only applies to teachers in that scale, or any staff on that teacher scale, which is, basically teachers.
But you were still scrubbing the individual budgets to see if there's more items that we can cut.
If there's not a price increase attached to it. Any other questions?
What is the, the cost of like a 1 to 2% raise? Roughly.
We are still getting our salary surveys done. We should have them before the end of the month, hopefully maybe in the next 2 weeks. Last year, for a step 3% increase plus a step adjustments was $920,000. This includes a step. So we'll probably be looking at maybe another 400 to 500,000 because our steps are higher now. So that increase is different because it's based off your new matrix.
So that 920 was a 3%, is that what you said?
That's it.
Teresa, the steps, are you estimating at about 500,000?
520.
Did the 920 last year cover what was coming out of ESSER as well?
Yes.
So when we look at a $2.5 million increase in payroll, it's not exactly how it worked for this 920,000.
Correct.
The SPECO would be new payroll,
Yes.
but not the ESSER money.
Not that, correct. And it's not either SPECO because it was projected in year 70, in year function 93, because they were part of our payroll also, so those increased also. So whenever we increased the contribution on the SSA side for everyone else, that increased our contribution also. So that, it really does reflect that. Any other questions? Okay, so food service budget. We are a part of a food management company, Sodexo, and we set our prices based off of our state tool. So we are required to increase the rate as needed based off the tool. And if we don't, our general budget has to supplement the food service. But because we voted to increase the rates to align our general budget doesn't supplement the food service budget per se, but we do have, over the past years, we have had a bad debt fund that we have to fund back bad debt. So anything that is not covered by, or the charges that are not covered, this school district is required to reimburse food service for. So we are looking at about $9,000 to $12,000 a year of bad debt that needs to be reimbursed to the food service budget. And then in order for us to run based off our numbers and our contract agreements, this is our proposed budget.
But this doesn't show any price increase, any revenue increase. Is that still coming before August?
Yes.
So you'll make those changes when we present next time? And then what about the fund balance we voted to spend? Will that show up when you finish in August as well?
Yes, that will. That fund balance is required to be spent in child nutrition. So I will present what we are finishing the year with, or projected to finish 23-24, minus our expected expenditures for all of the capital outlay, which is the cafeteria equipment. So all of that will be presented now that Texas Agriculture approved the capital. I know we went out for bids, and then we brought the bids to you and y'all approved them, but we still have to have TDA approve that capital expenditure. So they approved it, and now we're in the process of getting all that purchased and here. So now that I can present that more accurately. And then debt service. Debt service is our bond payment. And then there's fees for our bond, which are some disclosures and some fees for maintaining the bond, that increased. But we're not increasing I'm not anticipating on increasing the rate. We're still waiting on our certified values in order to see this. Certified values do not affect this, which is a good thing.
What point do we need to have a discussion on whether we make an extra bond payment for that fund balance that's growing?
We can start having those conversations, now.
Is that something you recommend? Does that? Think about it some more.
Yeah.
Just our financial advisor give us that.
They do. They'll give us like analyze what savings we would be looking at if we buy it now.
Can we find that out?
Yeah, I can request that.
Thank you.
And then the next page is just all three required adopted budgets side by side. By function. So general 199 is 3.8 million for work. So our next steps, we have to monitor our special programs, all of that, our staff vacancies to make sure we're budgeting for everyone, new hires and people that are changing campuses, make sure we capture them. Budget requests and renewals. And then July 25th, we're required to get certified values. And then just start projecting there for tax collections and state aid and compressed rates. And then in August, we'll come back and, give y'all those rates and adopt a budget and a tax rate. So we're anticipating, we usually, have a public meeting for budget and tax rate at the end of August. We're required to, do it before August 31st, but we're required to post by August 20th, 10 days. We have to have a notice posted that we're gonna discuss budget and tax rate publicly 10 days before we do in the local newspaper. So that would, if we give them August, or if we start publicizing August 1st, it has to be within 10 to 30 days, no more. So we'll, looking at August the 28th to adopt, and we'll start advertising 10 days before, no earlier than August 1st. Any questions? Oh, I have one more thing. Student ratios. So, our budget is, composed of 78% payroll, almost 80% payroll. And then this is what we're projecting in student-teacher ratios. So campuses are built up differently. Elementaries and secondaries are built up differently. So we wanted to show more of a accurate picture of what you're seeing in the classroom. So for example, ABC might have 37 teachers, but homeroom teachers, you only have 23. So you're looking at 21 students per class. But if you put all of the other teachers included, which are your specials and computer and life skills, all of those teachers, you would see a ratio of 14.8%. So if you look at paper, that reflects the teacher ratio, and that shows a 14.8%. But that includes everything. but in homeroom, it's 21 students. So for Capital South, if they're math, English, read your core subjects, your homeroom teachers, they're seeing 21, 22 students in those classrooms. But if you don't count those, if you count like art, music, your life skills, all of those, you're saying, oh, how are we not good? Because we only have 12 students, when in reality they have 21. So we have to look at that. And so we try to do the same thing to break down the secondary level. So secondary level from middle school and high school, we have 61 and 59 teachers. And then you divide it by the 770 students, so you see 13 students per teacher. But in reality, when you break it down to core subjects only, we only have 33 teachers. So they're looking at 22 to 23 students in their classroom. And then you have life skills separate also. There's 38 life skills students, there's 3 teachers, so they have about 13 students in their class for life skills. So for ABC, there's 40 life skills students, there's 5 teachers, so it's 8 to 9. But in the high school, it's 13 to 13. So we try to break it down so you can see core plus the specials.
Do you have any idea how these numbers compare to the last year, the 23, 24?
You know, I did not do this. Now, if we went to taper, the most recent taper is the 22-23, so it doesn't have, you know, this past year. And of course, all they give is what Teresa was talking is all students divided by all teachers, which is going to be 12 to 13 kids. So honestly, we have not broken this down like this. We did this specifically for this meeting. So
I think the interest is are we in all of the costs that we're trying to save and all the places that we're trying to save, did we either intentionally or unintentionally increase classroom sizes? And to some that might feel like a bad thing, and it's not ideal, but it's also part of trying to cut costs, and so sometimes it's what we have to do.
well, you know, we our elementaries, ABC, Capital, and South, that they were all hovering right at 20, if not 21, and they all absorbed some teachers. Middle school absorbed quite a few, and TAs. High school really didn't absorb any. There was a life skills class that we did not fill this year that we're going to have to for next year. So it may have gone up just a little bit, but you know, not a lot. The ratio may have gone up a little bit, but not just a whole lot.
This is really helpful to understand the difference between the two numbers and understand what's going on in the classroom and the corridor. So thank you.
Yeah, I just think it's a lot better perspective when we look at how many kids are in that English teacher's class, divide, you know, and we take out all the specials and all the electives, you know, just gives you a different perspective. Mm-hmm.
Any more questions? That was the last part I had, was the teachers issue.
Any other comments on the presentation, what you would like to see different? This is a kind of a different step for us than in the
What
past.
we need to add for, like, I think we should see something August, regular board meeting, we need to look at this again. And then come back August 28th, and that's when we approve. This is too fresh, too new. There's still, a lot is still in the air. can change, good or bad, that I think we need to visit it again.
Maybe probably you'll have some of the storm.
And so in August, the regular board meeting, I can give y'all more information. And then that would, August board meeting to August 28th budget adoption meeting should be a lot closer in numbers.
A lot of protest,
Yes.
1,128.
Yes.
So when you have on this slide that says at the July board meeting, you present function level changes, that's not July, you expect that to be in August.
In August. Yeah, because our board meeting's on the 17th, and our values should, she said by the 15th, but they're not required to give them to us till the 25th.
Any other suggestions, requests? You said this is extremely helpful, and particularly when facing a giant deficit like this, none of us are particularly happy about it, but being more informed early is helpful. Thank you. Okay. Anything else before executive session? Okay. We'll dismiss. 7:43. And then come back in the regular session. Thank you.
Good enough?